Good afternoon and welcome to our workshop. My name is Nonkohlongwa and I'm the member of the BMF. This workshop is brought to you by the BMF. For our non-members who have logged on, welcome. And I would like to tell you a bit about the BMF. It stands for the Black Management Forum, and it's our organization. It's 45 years old this year, and it's a thought leadership organization. The main purpose of the BMF is to influence socioeconomic transformation in our country, and also to pursue socioeconomic justice, fairness, and equity. So welcome. I'll be facilitating this workshop this evening. What we do have, we're on the Zoom facility, and we have a raise hand for any questions that you have. We also have a chat box, and we welcome to hear your thoughts or your welcomes. I see some people have also already said welcome. And we have so far over 50 attendees, and we're looking forward to more people joining us. To outline the objective of the workshop, I would like to introduce Mr. Monde Ndlovu. He is our Head of Advocacy and Thought Leadership at the BMF. He keeps the heart of the BMF going. Thank you. Over to you, Monde.
Thank you, Nonku. Very good evening, colleagues. Thank you for taking the time to spend with the BMF this evening. Without further ado, just to get straight to the point, I think the video that was playing made it very clear as to some of the key programs of the organization, and that the organization is still well on par with its original objectives. Part of our objectives as the BMF as well internally in terms of driving socioeconomic transformation is to have policy workshops. And this is our first policy workshop this year, intending to end up with a BMF submission on the professionalization of the public service framework, which the National School of Government will today share with us and engage us as the BMF. So the end goal for us is not just to have a conversation about this new framework, proposed framework, but is for us as the BMF to think on it, to chew on it, and to eventually have our submission also go into the different submissions which are being handed over to government. So that's basically the purpose of why we are here today and what we are trying to do. And obviously, it will not be the last policy workshop from a national perspective. There will be other workshops that we will be doing around policy going forward this year, and making sure that the BMF elevates its voice, not just literally as you hear it, but also in written documents that we keep doing. Last year, we had a couple of policy workshops as well, and we did make key submissions. So we want to keep up that tempo this year in noticing key policy inputs that we should make as the organization. So without further ado, thank you very much for joining us, and special welcome to our guests this evening, Dr. Botshabelo Maja, Mr. Dino Punsemi, Ms. Faith Nyaka from the National School of Government. Thank you very much, colleagues, for taking the time to come and share with us this framework and engage us as BMF. We are truly grateful for the time that you'll spend with us in the next hour or so. Thank you, Nonku, and may we have a good deliberation this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Monde. Thank you for that outline and showing us the spirit of BMF and thought leadership and where we're going. I'm sure we're all looking forward to much more of these workshops and policy discussions. What I will do is try and minimize abbreviations, and we do have abbreviations. I'm going to ask our panelists to explain what they mean. Not everybody here has been an employee of the state or is working for the state, so it'll be good for our panels to sort of broaden it and speak to our student chapters, to speak to our young professionals, and also speak to our older members. So I'll just keep that in mind and make sure when there is an abbreviation, I take a note of it and we make sure that we can explain it. As Monde said, this is brought to us by the NSG. The NSG is a National School of Government, and taken from their own impact statement, this is what they do. They improve organizational performance in public sector institutions through education, training, and development. The school is part of the Ministry of Public Service and Administration, where the minister is Minister Senzo Mchunu and the deputy minister is Ms. Cindy Chukunga. So the leading subject matters from the National School of Government is Dr. Bochabelo Maja, with his team, the Chief Director and Head of Strategy, Mr. Dino Punsami, as well as the Head of Quality Assurance, Ms. Faith Nyaka. Just to give you a bit on Dr. Maja, I know he was saying he doesn't care and he feels everyone just cares about the subject matter, but I think when there is Black excellence, we should appreciate it and celebrate it. So he's the current DTG at the National School of Government, which I'm sure going forward will be named as NSG. So he's held this position for the last 8 years. He has been in education and training for over 22 years, and he's written a book. It's called The Within the Realm of Possibility, and it's a researched account of the burning issues that are facing higher education system in the country and the role of the previously Black universities in the sector. Prior to him joining the National School of Government, Doc held a senior position at Department of Labor as a labor market policy and also as chief research there at the Human Science Research Council. He has a master's in education from Wits, and he also holds a PhD from University of Wits. So welcome, and I'll pass it now to you over at Doc so you can introduce your team and you can take us through the framework.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Thank you, Nonku. Thank you very much, Monde. Colleagues, good evening. My name is Bochabelo Maja. I am here with my colleagues, Faith Nyaka and also Dino Punsami. Let me start by expressing our appreciation for this invite to share with you and discuss with you the framework on the professionalization of the public service. I'm just going to do some few commentaries on what we are trying to do and where we're trying to go. And I will ask my colleague, Ms. Faith Nyaka, to share with you the detailed presentation and the detailed proposals on the professionalization of the public service. So let's start from the beginning. In 2011, many of you are aware, we did as a country what we called a diagnostic review to try and understand what is it that is holding our country back from achieving its objectives. We need to reduce unemployment, we need to reduce poverty, but we are not able to achieve those objectives as well as we would like to. So we then developed, as many of you again know, what we called the National Development Plan. Some of you probably just know it as Vision 2030. It's called Vision 2030 because it's not an unending document. Our aim is to achieve certain things by the year 2030. When we did this many years ago, some of us thought that we might not be around by the year 2030. However, 2030 is now 9 years away, and we are getting increasingly worried as government as to whether will we be able to achieve our objectives in 9 years' time. In Chapter 13 of this National Development Plan, our aim is to build what we call a capable developmental state. The argument for this is simply that we believe that this country will not be able to move forward unless and until we have in place what is commonly referred to as a capable developmental state. Now, there are many parts to building this capable developmental state. Some of those parts, for instance, in the video that we just watched from the Black Management Forum, is about the simple things that are hitting the media every day: ethics, corruption, and how we are going to deal with those. Those are the easy parts, because people, when they steal, they'll probably be arrested and they go to jail. And the more of these people getting arrested, the less of them we have in the system. That's why I call it the easy part. The more difficult part is the parts that we are trying to deal with tonight. How to professionalize the public service in a manner that we have people in positions who are fit for purpose, who are passionate, who know what to do, how to do it in the most efficient and effective manner. We therefore believe that we needed to do this intervention on the professionalization of the public service. So we developed the framework, which we will be sharing with you through my colleague, Faith Nyaka. This framework that we are sharing with you has been approved by Cabinet. We tabled it before Cabinet, that's the Cabinet of South Africa, late last year. The Minister of Public Service and Administration gazetted it in late December. We are now in the process of undertaking public consultations that have been approved by Cabinet. We are hoping, and our intention is to be able, over and above the verbal interactions such as this one that we are having with the Black Management Forum, we are hoping and are looking forward to written inputs to be submitted to us, hopefully by this week, Friday, so that we can refine the framework, improve it, and submit the final version to Cabinet for final approval. What is this thing that we're talking about in terms of professionalizing the public service? We're talking about an intervention that goes beyond just qualifications. We're talking about an intervention that is beginning to affect behavior, attitude, outlook, and so forth. We identify in doing so that we would need to work across the system from the bottom to the top. And when we say from the bottom, we are including pre-entry into public service. Right all the way to the top of the public service, whether it be with boards of state-owned entities, whether it be with directors general and so forth. So that's the first layer. It's a bottom to top intervention that we are looking for. Secondly, it's a cross-sectoral intervention that we're looking for. Many of you might be aware, the public service is a big animal. We have nearly 1.4 million public servants when you look at the national and provincial level only. Once you start going into local government and municipalities, the numbers shoot up quite a lot. Across these 1.4 and more public servants are different people that do different things. Some of them are legal practitioners doing legal stuff. Some of them are finance people doing finance things. So the public service is in a sense a very good replica and or pilot of the country. If you think of South Africa as a country and the different economic sectors in the country as represented by organizations such as the Black Management Forum, all those sectors are replicated across the public service. So this is a big animal that we are hoping to eat bit by bit. Over the next 9 years, we are hopeful that we would have been able to professionalize key sectors of public service, such as finance, such as legal, where we would have people that are able to serve our people better and people who understand what the needs of our people are. I'm going to therefore ask my colleague, Ms. Faith Nyaka, to share with you the detailed framework that we are talking about, and then we'll all be available for engagement. Thank you very much, Nonku.
Colleagues, good evening. Can you hear me? Doctor?
Yes, yes, you can go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the discussion that we're going to have with you is with regard to the national implementation framework towards the professionalization of the public service. I'm trying to move the slides, Doc. I'm struggling here. I'm trying to close certain apps here. Let me see. Okay. With regard to the purpose of the presentation, I think Dr. Maja has taken you through this with the slide. I'm only going to indicate to you that the National School of Government is working together with the Department of Public Service and Administration under the leadership of the Minister of Public Service and Administration. There's a technical task team that was responsible for the conceptualization of this draft implementation framework. It was employees or officials from the National School of Government, Department of Public Service and Administration, and the Office of the Public Service Commission. With regard to the objectives, what is it that we want to achieve with this framework? We want to conceptualize the following terms: profession, professionalism, and also professionalization. And we also want to contextualize the professionalization of the public service. And we also came up with the key pillars for the professionalization of the public service. And we'll share with you the way forward. In order for you to access the framework document, you can go to the website that I've indicated on the presentation. And we believe that we're going to leave this presentation with you, so you'll be able to access the documents. Our approach in this framework, the work of this framework is part of a bigger project in order to strengthen state capacity. We have sampled relevant literature on the professionalization of public service, and we are currently in robust engagement with scholars and stakeholders on how to professionalize the public service. And at the end of this will culminate in the policy or legislative changes so that we can institutionalize professionalization. We need to have a clear implementation framework and a plan that will recognize the complexity of the public service, given the fact that some professions, as we currently speak, are already regulated through established bodies. We do have statutory professional bodies that are regulated by law, in your law, in your education, and the health-related fields, and also in medicine. There are other areas, as we discuss now, that are not regulated by any external structures or professional bodies. And the other aspect that we need to do is to profile the different categories of professions and their existing modes of external regulations, and also look at those that are not regulated, and also to explore whether the state should establish a professional body, specifically looking at the senior management services. And all those who are on occupational specific dispensation, OSD, should be compelled to register or belong to professional organizations, given the fact that OSD was created to recognize different types of specialists and the need to remunerate them in a manner that is comparable with their counterparts in other sectors.
I think let me start here, because what Faith was sharing with us so far was where we are in terms of the consultations that we've undertaken and the departments that we've worked with and how we got to this point. Now, let me then indicate just quickly, just 1 second, that we have undertaken a great deal of international comparisons that were aimed at informing the work that we are doing on professionalization. And in doing all of that work, we looked at a number of countries to try and inform ourselves as to how are other countries doing this work that we are trying to do, and how did it inform them in terms of professionalizing their own public services. We looked at these countries not as such to focus on the country themselves. So you will see now, we looked at the Republic of China, but the issue was not the Republic of China. The issue was to look at what that country has done to try and professionalize its public service. So many of you will know China is one of the biggest economies in the world. It's one of the most populous nations in the world. So therefore, we wanted to learn how it is able to manage its own public service in terms of professionalizing it. One of the things that we learned from that is the meritocratic public service that the Republic of China has been able to put in place over many decades, and how they administer what they call imperial examination systems, and they also conduct what they call a civil service exam. So to be a public servant in China, you don't just wake up today and then tomorrow you work for the government of China. Their system is extremely meritocratic. You enter at the bottom, you do exams, you succeed at those exams, you grow and you go up the system over a period of time. By the time, even when you look at their head of state, to be a head of state in China, you have to have proven yourself in being able to run specific industries, being qualified for those industries, for them to trust you to run the economy of the country. So we looked at that example. We looked at India, because India is another populous country. As you know, it has over 1 billion citizens. It's not the biggest economy in the world, but we needed to understand what is it that they do there to professionalize their public service. So again, what came up quite strongly was that they also administer exams for entry into public service. So you don't just wake up and you're a public servant, but you have to go through an examination system for you to be able to qualify entry into public service. South Korea, we looked at South Korea, and we checked what is it that they do there to professionalize their public service. We also looked at what are their promotion requirements, because professionalization is not just about entering, it is also about promotion within the public service. So you have to have served a certain length of service at a specific grade. You have to have done certain competency assessments. You go through screening and rescreening by what they call their promotion review board for you to qualify for promotion in South Korea. Of course, we didn't just look at the East and the West, we also looked in our neighboring countries, whether it be Botswana, whether it be Rwanda. Some of you might be aware, we've only started this in the last year or so. We now are conducting exams in South Africa for you to be able to be a senior public servant. For you to be appointed as a director in government and above, you have to complete a course that we call Ukela, which is an online course. You have to complete those assessments and you have to be declared competent before you can go for an interview or before you can be shortlisted for appointment into government. So those are some of the examples we've learned from India. Those are some of the examples that we've learned from China. Different countries, however, apply different approaches. And we are hoping that from the lessons we are learning from these different countries, we will be able in our professionalization endeavor to provide a combination of the different lessons that we are learning for us to come up with a product that works for us. Now, what do we mean by professionalization of the public service? I've hinted some of these upfront. It has to deal with attitudes and behavior towards serving the public. It has to deal with making sure that we have people who are qualified and who are fully equipped to do their jobs with diligence, what we call execution diligence. It means that we will need to create professional categories. Faith indicated that in some sectors, professional categories already exist. If you look at SAICA, for example, in finance, that is a professional body that exists that focuses on the finance area. There are a number of other areas that we will have to look at where professional categories do not exist yet and or professional bodies are non-existent. And in those instances, we'll have to create them. We are also clear that moving forward, part of professionalizing has to mean a public service that is non-partisan. Our public service in South Africa has to be depoliticized. There is a difference, however, and we are always at pains to point this out. There is a difference between being depoliticized and being apolitical. There's no human being in the world who can be apolitical. All human beings are political animals. However, we do not have to be partisan. So therefore, we need a public service that is non-partisan to move forward. We also point out that in professionalizing, we must also deal with other things that are not necessarily about capacity development, are not necessarily about training, but they are core to professionalization and they are core to what I said upfront, which is to build a capable developmental state in 9 years' time. So those include, as we professionalize, we must deal with the issue of the tenure of DGs and HODs. As you know, work that has been done to look at the average tenure of DGs and HODs shows that on average, in the last 7 years or so, the tenure of a typical DG has been 3 years or less. You can't run government departments with people coming and going every day. We have to deal with that. We believe we have to deal with this issue of creating a head of the public service. It is in the National Development Plan, and ourselves with the Department of Public Service and Administration are dealing with that issue of creating a head of the public service. That head will play a role in the management of career incidents of DGs, in their appointments, in their shortlisting, and so forth, working very closely with the relevant executive authorities. We will have to deal with the issue of competency assessments. You know already, for instance, that to be appointed as a senior manager in government, for the last 4 or 5 years already under the Department of Public Service and Administration, you have to complete a competency assessment. We are looking at how that competency assessment and the examination issue that I mentioned earlier can be introduced to those below the senior management service of the public. Fourthly, we have to deal with the issue of how long DGs are appointed for. The maximum we've had is 5-year contract term. Many ways, in many instances, it's been 3-year contract terms. We are proposing that moving forward, we have to increase the terms of heads of departments and DGs to 7-year contract terms. Not permanent, but 7-year contract terms. Yes, they are and will be renewable. So they can be renewed for another 7 years. However, in appointing and renewing appointments of DGs and HODs, we have to deal with the issue of the revolving door policy. And what do we mean by this is that in 2008 already, we put in place with the Department of Public Service and Administration, a policy that dealt with the revolving door. The revolving door is about how we can facilitate movement between those in public service going on to private sector and those in the private sector coming onto public service. We want to facilitate that because we believe that there is a lot, these two sectors, private and public, can learn from each other. There is a lot of cross-fertilization that can take place to the benefit of the country, and therefore we need to put in place mechanisms that facilitate that. So we continue with a number of other fundamentals, including, for example, we would be looking for a single dispensation of professional registration and regulation across the public service. We would be looking for public servants that are required to live the commitment of upholding the principles of Batupili that we are all familiar with. And of course, we would be looking at ways in which professional bodies that are regulated external to the public service can be given full recognition through the various professional bodies that exist. What all of this means is that we would have to deal with this issue of putting in place a capable developmental state. We would have to deal with this issue of public servants being servants before the people. We would have to deal with the issue of making sure that we pay due attention to specific circumstances of the people in our policymaking processes, and also being responsive and diligent and remaining with the task until it's resolved. Now, there are three parts here that we are focusing on moving forward. And we share this with you so that you can appreciate, hopefully, that professionalization is not a straitjacket. It's about the individual. So we must professionalize every public servant, him or herself. So it's about the individual. We call this professionalism. So every one of us in government must embody this professionalism that we are talking about. Number two, we are saying it is also about the discipline. So as we categorize the various fields that need to be professionalized, we will need to put in place various mechanisms that not only establish each of those disciplines, whether it be finance, whether it be law, whether it be human resources, whether it be senior management service, but also introduce a second layer of consequence management. Now, let me explain this. At the moment in government, consequence management is an employer-employee issue. So if you misbehave and you are an employee, the employer has the responsibility to take action, disciplinary action against you. And that issue remains between the two of you, that is the employer and the employee. By professionalizing, we are aiming to introduce a second layer of consequence management. What that means is that once the professional bodies are in place, they have their rules and regulations, they've been recognized, we will then have to work closely with our colleagues in the Public Service and Administration Department to see how we can relate those rules and regulations of the various professional bodies that will have been established, that will have been recognized, to employment processes themselves. So for example, to be a CEO in the a CFO, Chief Financial Officer in the private sector, they can easily say to you, you need to be a chartered accountant. To be a chartered accountant, you need to register with SAICA and go through their processes to be recognized as a chartered accountant. In government, as things stand, you can be a chief financial officer without belonging to SAICA and without being a chartered accountant. We are saying once we introduce that in the public sector, it will mean that therefore you cannot be appointed as a CFO in government unless if you are a chartered accountant and you are recognized by SAICA. The implications of that for this second layer of consequence management are simple. It means that if you do anything wrong, over and above your employer-employee relationship, if SAICA decides that you are not good enough to remain a member and they withdraw your membership of SAICA, it will have adverse implications on your position as a chief financial officer. That is the issue of the profession that we are trying to deal with. The third one is professionalization. Here we're looking at the sector itself. Here we're looking at the space, because it's no use to professionalize the individual, to have the profession in place, but the sector, and here that is the state itself, not being ready to receive you, not being ready to give you the space to behave and practice your professionalism. So there are a number of things that we are proposing that we will have to do in that third layer to deal with the issue of the sector itself being ready to be professional. Having spent so much time explaining it here, I am not going to go into the details in the next slide, and I will move on to the issue of the pillars that we are proposing. So we are proposing what we call the key 5 pillars of professionalizing across the value chain. I indicated earlier on in my opening remarks that we are looking at a bottom to top approach. From pre-entry, before you enter public service, we are going to ask you hard questions about whether you qualify to enter or not. And those hard questions will come through competency assessments, will come through exams and tests that will administer even before you enter. Yes, it means that for you to enter government, you must have been wanting to be a public servant from grade 3. This thing of being a public servant, being a last-minute resort when you've not succeeded to be a successful businessman, when you've not succeeded to be a pilot, when you've not succeeded to be a medical doctor, we want to bring it to an end. We want the choice of being a public servant to be part of your original choice. You need to say when you're in grade 3, when I grow up, I want to be a public servant. Because that then will shape everything you do henceforth. So we are going to be engaging with our universities and our higher education institutions across the board and ask them hard questions. What is it that you are preparing those who are doing public administration programs in your universities? What is it that you are doing to prepare them to be professional public servants? And we will work with them to co-develop programs and courses that will deal with putting in place key elements that will make sure that when you come for your pre-entry recruitment and selection, you are ready to go and you can enter. Of course, once you are in, we induct you, we do planning and performance management, you continue to learn and to develop yourself professionally moving forth, and you are able to then experience what we call career progression and career incidents at the top. By that time, after 20 years, you'll be a director general, having come through the system all the way up. You will not just wake up today and tomorrow you are a director general having been in the system for 2 days. So we're trying to deal with that. Now, having done all of this, what do we mean in terms of moving forward is that we are hoping that in creating these professional communities that we are talking about, a number of them will be voluntary networks and fora. Some will be formal bodies. We are also looking at establishing a professional body for senior management service in the public service that will be targeting senior managers. And we are hoping that all these professional communities will have established codes of conduct, will have membership and affiliation fees. We will be able to influence their curriculum per discipline. We will be able to set exams and tests. There will be professional licenses issued and withdrawn when you misbehave as part of consequence management. They will set requirements and procedures for continuing professional development. Of course, consequence management is also about sanction decisions. They will, as they always do, have their own gatherings such as conference. Some of them even have journal articles and also have a board. We are aiming to target where those bodies exist. To target them, we are already in discussion with the built environment to enter into partnership agreement, so that what they've been doing for all these years, and they've been doing very well in professionalizing, engineers, all those in the built environment, we can piggyback on that and introduce systems and processes in government that take advantage of that. We are engaging with the legal profession through the Legal Practice Council to see how the issue of pupillage can be introduced for government officials to be able to serve before court, to be able to prepare legal documents. We are engaging with the Institute of Directors, South Africa, IODSA, and others to see how we can put in place mechanisms to professionalize those who serve on boards of state-owned entities, so that even in that case, you have to go through a system of checks and balances, tests and assessments for you to qualify to be appointed onto a board, whether it be ESCOM and so forth. So we are engaging with those institutes and we're entering into partnerships to be able to do all that work with them. We unfortunately will have to target specific areas. As I indicated, we only have 9 years to go. Supply chain management, I don't have to restate that. It's every day in the news. We have to target that with financial management that deal with it. Issues around human resource management and ICT are important. With the COVID-19 pandemic, risk management and business continuity has become quite forefront, and we'll be also looking at that. Engineering and project management are also important. So those are the professional communities that we're looking at. That is the area that we're looking at in terms of a professional association for the public service, which will not be a bargaining council. And we are hoping that moving forward, we will be able to then find from you, hopefully by this Friday, submissions where you will assist us to improve on this. We might have missed 1 or 2 ideas. We hope that you will then give us an indication of areas where we might have overlooked certain aspects. You guide us and you give us an indication there. And we then will hope to conclude this process in the coming few months and move forward. That is the story from our side. That's what we wanted to share with yourselves. And moving forward, we hope to be able to then have a proper engagement here and over the next few days, so that we can then be able to benefit from your input. Thank you very much, Chair. I think we'll stop there.
Thank you very much, Doc. There was a lot to take in. I see we have some questions and some thoughts that we can start to tackle. We do have some time for Q&A. Is there anything, Doc, that you would like Dino to add, or?
Yes, let me give both my colleagues Dino and Faith to add, please.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Nonko, and good afternoon, good evening rather, to all of the attendees. I think, you know, we've started this process, which has been, you know, as Dr. Maja indicated, a fairly big process for us at the time when the Minister of Public Service and Administration has requested us to, you know, to do this work. There's been a lot of engagements in the last week, including today. So we've had about 6 consultation sessions with different stakeholders. And I think a lot of the issues that are coming up in the chat conversations are some of the issues I think that we are also grappling with in this document. For example, the question there from Nosizwe, you know, about the occupation-specific dispensation. it has been a matter that has arisen through all of the through most of the conversations that we have been having. And so part of this process is really to review the way the occupational specific dispensation has been managed, within government. And so the framework hopes to actually deal with that. I picked up the other question around the Engineering Council. There was a question there. Look, importantly for us here is that we do come in from a point of not having all of the answers. And I think that is why it's important for us to be having these consultations with the different stakeholders. There are many things that as we go through these processes, we do pick up, we do find, and an important area for us that has arisen in all of the conversations, particularly as Dr. Maja spoke about the built environment, is the need perhaps for broader reforms that needs to take place, not necessarily just within the confines of the Public Service Act or the Public Administration Act, but other pieces of legislation that may need to actually support the work around the professionalization. So the point raised within the Engineering Council, these are some of the stakeholders we've engaged with as part of the broader built environment. And so there's a lot of sharing that is happening. In fact, as we speak, there was an email sent through by our principal. I think one of the planning associations is also doing some kind of consultation work. And so the reverse is happening for us, where we've been asked to make comments in terms of the professionalization of the planning environment. So I think there's a lot of work that is starting to happen in this space. The depoliticization around that, perhaps Dr. Maja will explain further, as he had explained. It's not going to be easy, but I think the issues that we want to introduce from the point of the pre-entry into the public service, all the way in terms of how your career is being managed, is that we look at this. Part of what we are proposing in the conversation, Sifiso, is that the role of the Public Service Commission as an independent body may have to play its role, for example, in the appointments of heads of department, accounting officers, national, provincial levels, where they would make recommendations to ministers around technically competent people who are able to fulfill a certain accounting officer role. So these are some of the areas that that we would have to look further into. Thank you very much, Nonko. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You did very well with the questions. Is there any that I think you missed? And we also have hands up. Are you happy for me to take some questions, Dino? There's some raised.
I'm sure together with Dr. Maja, we should be able to deal with them.
Okay, just to make sure we've gone through the Q&A properly, you did answer the Council of Built Environment, the engineering. And then you did sort of touch on taking off politics out of the administration and making it apolitical, but I don't think you went in deep enough for that. I know there's some issues with SAMU and SALGA on this matter. And then we do have a question on the Nuclear course. I don't know if you want to take that, Dino.
Okay, thank you. So of course, on the Nuclear is part of this process of professionalization, which is around the pre-entry into the public service. And so effectively what it means is that for any individual wanting to become a senior manager in the public service at national, provincial governments, whether you're within the system, in other words, if you are like Nhlanhla is asking, if at a deputy director and below, the rules have changed somewhat by the DPSA in as far as the appointments or the management of the senior management system within government. So you've got to have experience at a deputy director level to move into that space of senior manager. But it does require of you, as an example, to do the Nuclear course. So you could be someone who is based in private sector wanting to become a director or chief director in government. All of you have to go through the course together with those who are serving as public servants who wish to become directors or chief directors. The course, I mean, it's a fully online course. It's one of the first programs that we've run where there's a direct engagement to, with a learner, be it in the private sector. I mean, the way traditionally the National School of Government is set up is that we train public servants. And so we are normally dealing with departments as far as, the payments and all of that. So this has been the first program for us where we're actually rolling out to non-public servants as well. I think importantly here is that it gives you a very good grounding in terms of understanding the public service and the role as a senior manager. And of course, Dr. Maja has been key in the development of that program. It's a phenomenal program if you do it, fully online at your own pace. But it has become so critical now, in the sense that even appointments that get up to the level of cabinet, DGs, DDGs, you've got to have this because it has become, a requirement that you must have. So practically, if you're submitting your CV for a job, underneath your ID document must be Nukela. If you don't have that, all of the other qualifications that you may have may not, be, sort of as important as having the Nukela certificate as a requirement. And it's of course fully online. You do it at your own pace, and very beautiful case studies, really testing your knowledge. There are other programs that the school is offering as well that can be coupled with this, issues around managing performance, issues around ethics in the public service, and so forth. Thank you, Nonko.
Thank you. I see there's more questions for Kani Solomzi, but what I will ask is for BMF support to help us with the raised hands and make sure people can get online and ask their questions first.
Hello.
Hi, Lapan.
Thank you for this opportunity. I would like to first of all appreciate the presentation by Dr. Maja. Mine is a very simple one. In the presentation, Dr. Maja indicated that one of the proposals on the table currently, especially around the appointment of the DGs, is that they should at least serve a contract or be appointed on a contract of about 7 years. However, knowing with the knowledge that we have around how the public service operates or work, one is a bit worried that that recommendation or proposal does not go far enough in terms of insulating some of these senior officials in government. It still exposes them to unfair or undue influences, especially at the time on which their contracts are due for renewal. And we might find that we did not solve any problem by making their contracts as long as 7 years, as long as at some point they would still be susceptible to such influences. Is it possible for us to, or for this proposal to be amended such that their appointments or their contracts are non-renewable, the same way as public protector, the same way as Auditor General's contract is? And secondly, would be Dr. Maja made mention of the Batupile principle, which is part of the professionalism that should exist within the public sector. However, I did not get a sense that those principles are amplified enough. And as such, I feel that it is one Batupile as a set of principles. Those might be some of the low-hanging fruits from which we should begin our discussions around the professionalization of the public sector. For now, that would be my contribution for now. Thank you very much. Hello.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Let's take another question, please, Itu.
Okay, next is Okiza Koza.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Thank you. Yeah. Look, I've read the document in the Government Gazette, and thanks for the hard work to the team in Busan. Key though is the implementation, right? We are good in drafting papers and not as good in implementing them. And if one looks at certain people who have suffered badly in the public sector, starting with the then DG of Justice, who wrote to everybody else. And when he tells his story, he had to sell his house to afford the legal fees. And he was standing up against unethical behavior of an executive authority. We've got a number of people in the Free State who've come before the Zondo Commission saying that people were saying they will walk next to their shoes, right? How are we going to ensure that we protect ethical public servants from unethical and dishonest executive authority, right? And one of the suggestions I have said and shared is that you need to amend the Public Service Act, because the Public Service Act says the executive authority appoints, right? He may delegate that to the accounting officer or the HOD, but he appoints from a cleaner to the DG, if not the minister at DG level, the president at DG level. So those are some of the mechanisms that we need to come up with. Now, you also cite the China way. And I've studied the governance in China. In China, the emphasis before it gets to a public servant who's an official starts with the politician who's an executive authority. In China, Jinping managed from a small municipality. Over the years, he graduated to become a president of China, right? So there's that system. Are we going to have that system? Because to just put more emphasis on bureaucrats who are public servants and not putting more emphasis on those who've got the power over them, practically for me, we're just going to have a nice document that sits there with no life. So that would be my input. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kaiser. If you just take one more question and then we'll go to answers.
Okay, we have Nosisa next.
Okay, welcome, Nosisa.
Thank you, Nonku. Thank you, colleagues. Especially thank you to Dr. Maja and Mr. Kunsami. My question is around the Nyukela SMS free entry certificate. Very interesting and enlightening presentations, gentlemen. My question then is around the adverts of SMSs. How do you make sure that this is implemented at provincial level? How do you make sure that the positions that are advertised have this content to say the SMS member must have the completion certificate or certificate of completion, and there will be these technical assessments that are going to be conducted? So that's question number one. How do you make sure that that is done at a provincial level as prescribed by this program, by the DPSA? And then my second, well, look, I must say I have completed mine. So, I'm getting ready for whatever comes my way.
Sorry, are you done with your question?
And then the second question, sorry, quickly. The course was introduced in 2019. How are those SMS members that joined before 2019? What happens to those ones? How do they catch up in as far as the scrutiny is concerned? Thank you.
Hello, Ambassador is the dear.
Thank you for those questions. Doctor, you are happy to answer those questions before we go to the next ones?
We can deal with those issues that have been raised. Just to say upfront that what my colleague, Mr. Kunsami said, is that of course we are consulting, so we don't have all the answers. And actually some of the answers are in a forum such as this. And we hope to receive some of the suggestions this week on Friday. But let's deal with the issues that have been raised, really not because we know the answers, but because we want to engage with the debate. Ntatema Afa says the issue of increasing the tenure of DGs to 7 years will not be enough to insulate them. We have to look at this intervention as a package. And that is why even in our presentation, we were at pains to point to various aspects of this intervention over and above just professionalizing being looked at in a narrow sense. So for instance, so we say we're going to increase the tenure, the contract appointment from the current 5 years to 7 years. You must look at that in conjunction together with our proposal in terms of appointing a head of the public service. If you look at the rationale for the appointment of a head of the public service that is already in the National Development Plan, the argument is that the head of the public service will be a public servant first and foremost. Secondly, he will be central in managing career incidents of DGs and HODs.
Hi. What's happening?
Sorry, Doc. Itu, can you help us unmute, to mute those who have asked questions? They're unable to mute themselves. Sorry, Doc, about that.
Not a problem, thank you. So we have to look at it as a package, not just to increase their contract appointment to 7 years, but also that their career incidents will be managed through the head of the public service. Thirdly, that we are looking at a stronger role for the Office of the Public Service Commission in terms of performance management, performance evaluation of DGs and HODs moving forward. We expect that a combination of these interventions will give us a certain level of insulation. It will not be total, it will not be complete. There will still be an element of susceptibility to executive interference, but we are hoping that these interventions will give us sufficient insulation for DGs to be able to focus on their work long enough to make a difference. So it's a package that we would like to propose. And yes, I hear your point about amplifying Batupili. I would be very keen if you could help us with suggestions on how, in our current proposals, over and above, making sure that we deal with issues of Batupili, how we can amplify it, because I think we are all interested in making sure that we amplify Batupili, and I think that's a good suggestion. And then the second input was from our colleague with a very conflicting name and surname, because I know it's embarrassing, but I'm still a Kaizer Chiefs supporter. So when I saw Kaizer, I got excited, but then I saw the surname and I wasn't sure anymore. Now, the issue is implementation. Implementation is key. I couldn't say it better than you were saying it. We're going to do our best, Kaizer, to get this thing right. And in doing our best, we're not saying that there won't be mistakes and we won't get certain things wrong. But South Africa has a very big implementation problem. We accept that. We're very good at not implementing. Even when we do, we can mess it up very easily. So we're quite keen to be professional around how we do this and hope that it will be able to come through. And yes, the problem that we're going to have, and we accept this, is that a lot of pain comes through with this intervention. So there's quite a lot of pain that we've gone through as South Africans and as public servants. And there are many examples of things having gone wrong, that as we are making this intervention, we carry those with us. Yes, we must not forget, but we need to find a way of using this pain to inform us as lessons for the future. it's not going to help us to say this happened in the past. What will help us is to say, because this happened in the past, if we do the following things, we are less likely to see a repeat. So it's about ensuring that we put in place systems and mechanisms and processes that minimize the chances of us seeing a repeat. So again, we would hope that by having professional bodies, because they're not just for consequence management, you will have a community of practice where public servants will have a second home. Their home will no longer just be an employer and employee home at work. They will have a professional body where they have a second home, where they can go and share their challenges and difficulties, advise each other, but also be able to share innovation and examples of good practice so that those periodically and over time infuse themselves back into the system of public service. So yes, we will have to amend the Public Service Act, especially the clause that you are mentioning. There is already a process underway led by the Minister of Public Service and Administration. There are proposals already to deal with that very clause that you were mentioning, because we feel that part of what we need to deal with are the powers of accounting officers vis-a-vis the powers of executive authorities. But also we need to synchronize the powers that are given to accounting officers by the Public Finance Management Act vis-a-vis those that are given to them by the Public Service Act. So all those laws and legislation, including the Public Administration Management Act, are currently being reviewed, and we are hoping that we will be able to move forward on that. The executive authorities, yes, and I mean the example of Jinping in China is a good example. We are learning what we can learn from there. Of course, we can't just transplant what is happening in other countries and bring it here. We will have to then look at our own context and say, what is it that we can bring in to assist us, and what is it that we don't need to bring in because what we already have is better than what they have over there. Nosisa Penga, we started with Nukela in the last year, and our colleagues through the DG of the Department of Public Service and Administration, all national and provincial government departments have been informed to make sure that they make sure that those that are shortlisted and appointed onto senior management positions are in possession of the competency certificate arising out of Nukela. We assess together with our colleagues in the Department of Public Service all the adverts that are coming out, and we screen and we check them to see whether they are putting that requirement in place. We are pushing the AG, the Auditor General, to make sure that as part of the auditing processes of government departments, that though where there are appointments of senior managers, there would have to be the related paperwork and paper trail that shows that the advert did put in place the need for those applying for senior management to be in possession of the Nukela certificate, and that those that are appointed were appointed over and above their qualifications, but also having submitted that same certificate. We are only a year or two into this, and yes, at the beginning, we didn't see much compliance, but I must say in the last 6 months, we've seen an increasing number of government departments that are complying. In fact, we have some statistics somewhere. If I had them handy, I'd share them with you, that we are quite confident that more and more government departments will make sure that their adverts include those that have completed Nukela. And your last point, what about the senior management services that have been there before 2019, like me? Well, when we were appointed, those that are old in the service, we didn't have this requirement. But if you look at the five key pillars of professionalization that we are proposing, those 5 key pillars are making sure that we do not miss anyone. So the old guys like me will have to go back to the National School of Government to be what we call onboarded. So we talk about onboarding. So you have to go back, like we use the word the simulator. When you are a pilot, you don't just fly aircraft for the rest of your life because you have pilot qualifications. You have to periodically go back to what is called a simulator and to prove your mettle there. We are proposing the same for the public service, that many of those that have been around will have to continue to be onboarded. And this is over and above the pre-entry through Nukela. This is over and above the induction. This is now about onboarding. This is about continuous professional development moving forward. This is also about management of career incidents of public servants moving forward. I don't know whether my colleagues want to add, but I would like to stop the chair.
Thank you very much. We are out of time, but we have a few questions that I thought maybe we could touch on, and then we could close and not take any more. Monda, are you okay with us just taking just dealing with the written questions?
Okay, that's fine. Let's take one or two.
Okay. So one of them is from the Khoza. So Doc, I appreciate the Khoza surname because I'm a Pirates fan. So on there he says, how do we intend holding doctors responsible? How do we miss another life esitimeni if that situation sort of happens? And then he did ask the second part of his question online, and you did answer him on how do you shield honest public servants. And the next one is from Sakumzi. He's asking if you are engaging with your unions because it is heavily unionized. So how are you making sure that this doesn't get political interference and gets and the plan passes and we're able now to adopt the framework? What he also says, he says that we know that some of the public servants are old and not necessarily professionals, but are in the position on the base of experience. How will the onboarding help with that? Puleng was asking, as a service provider, there's two questions as service providers, Doc, and it says, is it worthwhile for service providers to understand how government works? And is there a plan on how we integrate them into this? The next one on service providers was, how do we know that the service providers are competent and able to deliver as per the SLA? I know you're only looking at public servants, but if there's anything you can add there on contract management and if such a course exists at the school. And one is from Mark, and he was asking if we'll get a full copy of the presentation. And those are all the questions.
I don't know whether my colleague wants to take some first, so that I'm sure people are tired of this beard of mine by now. So, your beard is smaller. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, but I also have to respect the pay grades, so I'll do the easy ones. No, thank you very much, Nonku, for those questions. I think, as Dr. Maja indicated, we're on this journey together, and so, we really are taking notes. We're taking, some of the issues. The programs at the National School of Government, primarily, of course, we target the public servants, but certainly, we'd be happy to engage with anyone who wants to understand a little bit more about government. I think some of the programs, as well around the the onboarding process. There are many programs. In fact, the school has in the region of about 130 courses and programs that we roll out, which spans across the different occupational bands in the public service. Part of the programs that we're looking to introduce, in fact, I think work has already commented, is a reorientation program, which basically targets the long-serving public servants to reorientate them back into, into how government is actually working. And that's quite a key program for us as we look at it. In the presentation, we did indicate that contracts, project and contracts management is another area for us that we would like to focus on. And I think importantly, the conversations we've had with the built environment really around this process of how contracts are managed, how projects are managed. It would be difficult because we don't have a mandate to deal with service providers. But certainly, I think in the manner in which a professional contracts manager in the public service manages the contract is the important part. So if an SLA is not being met, it means that the person who is managing the contract is not doing his or her work as it should be done. And I think the workforce is really looking at how you professionalize those project and contracts managers there. I think from my side, I'm done, Nonku. I think Dr. Maja may just want to add a few more comments, but thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Nonku, did we miss any other question? Have we responded to everything? Do you think we've missed something?
They did ask if they will get a full copy of the presentation, if that will be shared.
Of course, yes. We will send the presentation to yourself, Nonku, and then you can share with members of BMF. Would that be okay?
That'll be okay. Thank you. The last one was how do you work with the SAPS? Because there's been complaints on the SAPS with members regarding police brutality. And I know there's a body called IPID. How do these work together? There was a question from Solonzi.
Well, look, I mean, how do you eat an elephant? You eat it piece by piece, There are issues there with the police, as you say, but to be honest, we were not prioritizing them as part of our immediate interventions, but however, part of professionalization, of course, will include the police. In fact, Kaizer Chiefs also raised the issue of doctors, and I think it's the same thing there. There are professional bodies in the medical field, and the Council for Medical Practitioners is quite disciplined in terms of consequence management. What we would be looking at there is how we could work with them in terms of how they could assist medical practitioners. The life asset domain is mentioned there as an example. So the police also, they have very good training academies, and we would be looking at how we can take advantage of those to professionalize. We're not going to do everything all at once. We're going to eat it piece by piece, and hopefully over time, begin to make a difference.
Thank you.
Kaizer Chiefs, by the way, is Kaizer Koza. His surname is Chief.
Nonku, sorry, can I just respond to one last, I think it was Kumzi would raise the issue around the unions.
Okay.
Yeah, just to indicate that, of course, it is a key stakeholder for us to engage. In fact, we are working with our sister department, Public Service and Administration, of course, who are the employer reps in the bargaining council. So we'll be working closely with the DPSA to look at how we take forward the framework into the conversation with the organized labor and hear from that process. So it will be part of an information sharing and then getting into the consultation process. Thank you.
Okay, of course, thank you. And I'm sure the unions will be giving their inputs as well.
Yes, we'll also be engaging with the labor movement on this process.
Okay, thank you very much for your time. I would like to end with chapter 13 of the NDP, where it talks about building a capable state, and I will read it. It says, we feel loved, respected, and cared for in public institutions. What we contribute in our taxes, we get back through a higher quality of public service. And that is why we have good clinics and hospitals with well-trained caring doctors and administrators, nurses who rush to our aid with empathy and expertise, affordable, effective medicine because they were made for all of us, good schools with well-educated, trained and caring teachers. Each community has a school, teachers who love teaching and learning, a local library filled with a wealth of books and a librarian, a police station with respected and upright police, a clinic with a nurse who love caring for people. So I like this vision, and I'm proud of this vision. There is a quote that says it's never too late to start planning for the future. So I would like to thank our panels, thank the officials of the NSG for putting together this framework. It is a step to a brighter future and a better public service. I also would like to thank all the attendees. Without them, we wouldn't have this engagement. And a special thanks to BMF, Monde, and E2 for arranging this workshop. Thank you for your time, and we will certainly be giving you our inputs. Our closing date for inputs is tomorrow. We are sharing the email address of where the inputs should go to. Monde, on your side, do you have any closing thoughts?
I was just about to remind you of that last point, that members should send inputs through to, we'll put it up there, tikoti.masemula@bmfonline.co.za by close of business tomorrow, so that we can complete our process internally and also send to the board, etc., so that we can consolidate by Friday everything. So tomorrow by close of business. What we'll also do as well, because E2 has got direct access to all of the members that have registered for the workshop, that tomorrow morning he'll send that reminder again to all attendees with the framework that will be shared by the department, and then also remind them of this announcement as well, that close of business Tuesday, all inputs, anything beyond close of business coming from members, we won't accept it, because obviously we're working on a time frame and there's other responsibilities as well. So thank you very much. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, and take care, and all have a good evening and keep safe.